The pen was already in my hand. My son, Biodun, was sitting across the table, smiling the way he always smiles when he has already decided how something will go. Beside him, a man in a grey suit had papers spread across my kitchen table and was pointing at a dotted line with a capped pen like he did this every day, because he did. "Mama, just sign here and here," Biodun said softly.
This looks good to me.
"It is
We're in
nothing
agreement."
serious,
Yes,
just a
it's a
family
deal.
arrangement." The man in the grey suit nodded and smiled. My hand moved toward the paper. Then my phone rang. The number on the screen meant nothing to me. I did not recognize it. I almost set the phone face down and signed. Something I cannot explain to this day made me pick up instead. "Iyagba," my granddaughter Teniola's voice came through the line, breathless and urgent like she had been running. "Grandmother, do not sign anything. Please, whatever they have put in front of you, do not put your hand on it. I am begging you in the name of God." I looked up slowly from the phone. Biodun was watching me, still smiling, but his eyes had gone somewhere else entirely. I put the pen down. 3 months earlier. Biodun had been visiting every 2 weeks for 6 months. He always came with something: a bag of rice, tins of tomatoes, fresh fish from Lagos market packed in a cooler. Sometimes Simisola, his wife, came with him. Sometimes his 2 children. They would arrive on Saturday morning, fill my kitchen with noise and cooking smells, fix whatever small thing needed fixing around the house, and leave Sunday evening with me standing at the gate waving. After years of maybe one visit every 3 or 4 months, this new attention felt like rainfall after a long dry season. I am 71 years old. I have lived alone in this house in Bodija since Ezekiel died in 2019. The silence of a house that once held a husband and children and grandchildren visiting every holiday is a particular kind of silence, heavy, present. It sits with you at the dining table and follows you to bed. So, when Biodun began coming regularly, I did not question it. I cooked his favorite foods. I washed and ironed his clothes when he stayed overnight. I stayed up late listening to him talk about his business plans and his children's school reports and the Lagos traffic that was getting worse every year. I thanked God quietly every night for returning my son to me. I did not see what he was doing underneath all of it. The question started around the 3rd month, small, casual, always dropped into conversation between eating and laughing, so they felt like nothing. "Mama, this house is so big for one person. Have you thought about what happens to it eventually? Mama, where does Papa used to keep the important documents, the title and all that? Mama, if anything happened to you, God forbid, would the house not just go into probate and cause problems for everybody?" I answered him honestly every time. I told him the documents were in Ezekiel's metal box under my bed, where they had always been. I told him the house was in my name alone on the title deed, exactly as Ezekiel arranged it. I told him there would be no probate problem because I was not planning to die anytime soon, and when I did, everything was clearly documented. He always laughed at that last part. "Mama, you will outlive all of us." Then he would change the subject and ask if there was more stew. I did not understand that each answer I gave him was a piece of information he was filing away carefully for later. I did not understand that the man sitting across my table, eating my food and laughing at my jokes, was quietly building a case against me in his own mind. A mother does not expect to need protection from her firstborn son. That is the truth nobody tells you until it is almost too late. He came on a Thursday morning in October, without calling ahead. No Simisola, no children, no cooler of fish, just Biodun in a clean agbada and a man I had never seen before, who he introduced as Mr. Fashola, his friend from university now working as a lawyer in Ibadan. Mr. Fashola was about 45, grey suit, leather briefcase, the kind of man whose handshake is too firm and whose smile never quite reaches his eyes. I made tea. I set out biscuits. I was happy to have company on a Thursday morning. By the time I returned from the kitchen, Mr. Fashola's briefcase was open and papers were arranged in neat stacks across my kitchen table. I stood in the doorway holding the tea tray and felt the first small thread of unease pull somewhere in my chest. "Mama, sit down," Biodun said warmly, pulling out my own chair for me. "We have something important to discuss, something good for the family." I sat. I poured tea. I listened. Mr. Fashola spoke for a long time. He was smooth. He clearly had done this before. He used words like estate planning and joint tenancy and seamless succession. He talked about families torn apart by property disputes after parents died. He talked about how a simple legal arrangement now could prevent years of court wahala later. He talked about how Biodun, as the eldest son, only wanted to protect me and protect the family asset. The summary buried underneath all those smooth words was this: Biodun wanted his name added to the title of the house alongside mine. Once his name was on the title, he would be co-owner. It was for my own good. It was what any responsible family would do. It was nothing to worry about at all. Mr. Fashola pushed the papers toward me. I looked at them. Pages and pages of dense legal writing in small print. "Biodun, I want to read this before I sign anything." "Mama, Mr. Fashola has explained everything clearly. It is standard language, nothing unusual." "I understand. I still want to read it myself." Biodun leaned forward slightly. The warmth in his voice dropped 1 degree, just one, enough for me to notice if I was paying attention. "Mama, we drove from Lagos this morning. Mr. Fashola has another appointment this afternoon. We cannot stay long. Just sign and we can go and eat lunch somewhere nice. My treat." "Biodun, I said I want to read it." Mr. Fashola cleared his throat. "Madam, I assure you everything is completely standard. I have handled hundreds of these. Your son only has your best interest at heart." I looked at Mr. Fashola for a long moment. Then I looked at my son. Biodun was smiling, but his jaw was tight, and his hands on the table were very still, in the way hands go still when a person is controlling something underneath. I had carried this man in my body for 9 months. I had cleaned him and fed him and sat beside his sickbed through malaria and measles and a broken arm at age 7 when he fell from the mango tree in this very compound. I knew every expression his face was capable of making. That was not a comfortable smile. I picked up the first page of the documents and began to read. "Mama, Biodun," I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "Do not speak to me again until I finish reading." He sat back. The room went quiet except for the sound of the ceiling fan and the distant noise of Bodija street traffic outside. I had read 4 pages when my phone rang. I did not recognize the number, but I picked up. "Iya Agba." Teniola, my granddaughter, Ronke's firstborn, calling from a number I had never seen before, her voice tight and breathless and terrified. "Grandmother, do not sign anything on that table, please. Walk away from it right now." I stood up from my chair slowly. Biodun rose too. "Mama, who is that? What?" I held up one hand, the hand of a woman who has raised children and buried a husband and run a fabric shop in Dugbe Market for 20 years. The hand that says I will not be rushed or managed or spoken over. I walked to my bedroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed Ezekiel and I shared for 35 years. "Teniola, tell me everything." She talked for almost 15 minutes without stopping. 3 weeks earlier, she had come to visit her father in Lagos unannounced. She had wanted to surprise him before flying back to London. She let herself in with the spare key Simisola had given her years ago. The house seemed empty. She was in the kitchen making herself a drink when she heard her father's voice coming from his study down the corridor. He was on the phone, speaking low and fast, the way people speak when they believe nobody is listening. Teniola stood in the corridor outside the study door and listened. What she heard made her set her drink down very carefully so it would not make a sound. Biodun was talking to someone. She believed it was Simisola from the way he spoke, about the house in Bodija.
about the documents, about how the plan was nearly ready, and about how once the old woman signed, the transfer would be complete and the house would be in his name and he could use it to settle the debt with the bank before the end of the month. Not joint ownership, not estate planning, not any of the smooth words Mr. Fashola had spent an hour arranging in my kitchen. A full transfer of title, my name removed, his name alone. Biodun had borrowed heavily against a business that had collapsed. The creditors were not waiting any longer. The house in Bodija, my house, Ezekiel's house, the house with the mango tree and the tiles Ezekiel chose himself from a shop on Molete Road, was the only asset large enough.
Teniola had gone back to Lagos after returning to London. She went to her father's house on a day she knew he would be at his office. She sat in the corridor outside his study, where she had stood 3 weeks earlier. And this time, she pressed record on her phone before she knocked and let herself in to look for something she had deliberately left behind on her previous visit. She spent 11 minutes in that house. She got 8 minutes of a phone call her father made while she was pretending to look for her item in the sitting room. 8 minutes of Biodun discussing the Bodija house, the debt, the transfer, the plan to have the documents signed before I had time to show them to anyone. Mrs. Coker listened to the recording twice with her eyes closed. Then she opened them and looked at me. He came to your house with fraudulent transfer documents disguised as joint ownership papers and you did not sign? I did not sign. She nodded once. Then we have everything. She filed a criminal complaint with the Oyo State Police Command that same week. The charges were attempted fraud, conspiracy to obtain property by deception, and elder financial abuse. Mr. Fashola was separately reported to the Nigerian Bar Association for professional misconduct. A lawyer who drafts documents designed to deceive a 71-year-old woman out of her home has no business holding a license. Biodun was summoned for questioning. He arrived with his own lawyer and denied everything confidently. He said the documents were a genuine estate planning arrangement. He said his mother had misunderstood. He said Teniola had a difficult relationship with him and was using the situation to cause trouble. Then the investigating officer played the recording. The room went very quiet. Biodun's lawyer leaned over and whispered something in his ear. Biodun said nothing more after that. The case was committed to the Oyo State High Court. The hearing was on a Tuesday morning in February. The courtroom was not a large one, but it was full. Word travels fast in Bodija. Cousins and neighbors and people who had known Biodun since he was a boy sat in the wooden benches, watching him stand before the judge in his expensive agbada, looking at the floor. Teniola had flown in from London the Friday before. She sat beside me in a navy blue dress, holding my hand. She had not slept well since this began, neither had I. But we were both there, upright, present. The judge was a woman of about 60. She reviewed the evidence without rushing. She read the documents. She listened to portions of the recording through a speaker set up by the court clerk. She examined the transfer papers Mr. Fashola had prepared and compared them to what Biodun had described to me as a simple joint ownership arrangement. She took her time. That is what I remember most. She took her time and she was thorough, and she did not look at Biodun with anger. She looked at him the way you look at something that has disappointed you beyond the point of emotion. Then she looked up. This court finds the defendant guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted property theft through deception. The documents presented to the complainant on the date in question are declared fraudulent and void in their entirety. The title of the property located at Bodija Estate, Ibadan, remained solely and permanently in the name of Folashade Adeyemi. The defendant is sentenced to 14 months imprisonment. Full legal costs are awarded to the complainant. Mr. Fashola's matter is referred to the Bar Association with this court's strong recommendation for disbarment. She closed her file. 2 officers came and stood beside Biodun. He turned once and looked at me. I do not know what he was looking for. Pity, maybe, or some softness from his mother. I looked back at him steadily and said nothing. There was nothing left to say that the judge had not already said better. They led him out. Outside the courtroom, Teniola held me for a long time in the corridor. When she finally stepped back, her eyes were full. Iya Agagba, I am sorry I did not call you sooner.
I was afraid, and I wasted time, and Teniola. I held her face in my hands the way my own mother used to hold mine. You called in time. That is all that matters. You called in time. I went home to Bodija that evening. I sat in my compound under Ezekiel's mango tree with a cup of tea going cold in my hands and watched the neighborhood settle into night. Generators coming on one by one down the street. Children called inside by their mothers. The smell of evening cooking coming over compound walls. Everything ordinary. Everything continuing exactly as it should. The house was still mine. Every tile Ezekiel chose himself. Every curtain I sewed with my own hands. Every room that held 35 years of our life together. My son tried to take it with a smile and a pen and a lawyer who knew how to make wrong things look right on paper. My granddaughter saved it with a cheap SIM card and 8 minutes of courage. I have thought many times since that day about what would have happened if my phone had been on silent, if I had been too polite to answer a strange number in front of guests, if I had signed those 4 pages before Teniola's call came through. I would have lost everything and never known why until it was too late. There is a kind of love that announces itself loudly, that comes with gifts and visits and warm smiles and all the right words. And there is a kind of love that buys a SIM card in secret and calls from a number you do not recognize and says, "Grandmother, do not sign anything." Learn to know the difference. It will save your life. If this story moved you, please subscribe so you never miss the next one. Drop your city and the time in the comments. I want to see how far this reaches. 2 more stories are waiting on your screen right now. Click one and let us keep this time together. Much love. See you soon. Ready for the next story.